Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Some time ago, we were doing a video on road fatalities in Ireland, and one thing I did mention to you at the time that very little light is shone upon the amount of people who die of cancer, and especially the amount of people who get cancer every year. So this Micheál Martin has backed a ban on sunbeds, and he says the risk of cancer is too high. There's 13,000 skin cancers in Ireland every year diagnosed. By 2040, it is expected to double. One session on a sunbed can increase your skin cancer by 60%. 7% of the population in Ireland use a sunbed. That's 350,000 people. 3% of people use them once a week. There are currently 365 tanning salons in Ireland, but there's probably a few more unofficial ones in barbershops and hairdressers, these underground places. You have to be over 18 to use a sunbed in Ireland. You can get a sunbed for as little as €1 a minute. The danger is some of them are pay as you go. You don't have to pay for the sessions in advance, and that makes it more accessible to younger people. The Public Health the Public Health Sunbed Act was introduced in 2014. Up to that point, there were 900 operators. In 2016, that was reduced to 569, and there's currently 365 official tanning salons in Ireland. So, would you be in favour of a ban?
Well, no, because bans don't work. The word common sense and it needs to come into play here. I think the sunbeds are responsible for this skin cancer. There's other cancers that people get, and we have a high rate of cancer in the country from other causes other than sunbeds. But I think, for example, there's a scarcity of sun in this country, and July there for a good bit was more or less cloudy, and I often do a little item about stars at night. The wonder of nature, but you don't see stars too much because of the clouds. They're keeping the stars at bay. And when I was young, I used to be able to make out the plough and something else up in the sky. But I haven't seen stars for quite a bit because it's so foggy, or not foggy, cloudy. And there was a bit of sun there in June. And just as we're talking about sun and the scarcity of vitamin D is a very important ingredient, and it may be why sunbeds come into play in the beginning, and people mightn't have been aware or instructed about the amount of time. But suffice to say, there was a bit of sun, so I went out. I had my short trousers on, back to the childhood, you know yourself, and I had sat out my deck chair, so I just had a shirt and I had no shirt on. I wanted to get a bit of vitamin D, and I put on sun cream, 50, the L'Oreal thing, 50. I put it on where it might be necessary because I wasn't trying to get a tan. I was getting vitamin D because there's a scarcity of vitamin D. We don't get enough of it here, which often leads to other little problems. Well, I won't go into the other problems that occurs when you don't get vitamin D. And sometimes you can get a tablet that will give you vitamin D, but it's not the same as getting nature. And I remember when we were young, in Boyle, Kinder's Common, we used to, with the other lads of similar views, we all seemed to be interested in swimming and being down at what they call the lake shore in Corrigan Row, a few miles outside Boyle. And we used to cycle out, and so you'd be going up hills, and then you went down to the seashore, and there was no proper road at that time. It was rough ground, and you'd be going down your bicycle there. And how the bicycles didn't buckle up with rough ground, and we'd be sitting out, and you get sunburned. Now, thanks for the goodness, I'm still knocking about, so it didn't do me any harm. But you get sunburned because the sun seemed to be out. We seemed to have sunnier days then that I can recall when I was that age, 16 and 17 and so on and so forth. Anyways, but there in June, I sat out for about, say, 20, 30 minutes and getting a bit of sun on my arms and on my front, and then turning around trying to get a bit on my back and putting the sun. Well, it's very hard to put it on your back because your arms doesn't reach around that far. This is why you need somebody to be able to put it on your back, because you can't get to your back. I put a bit around here, there, and yonder, wherever I could. But vitamin D, you see. So that was nature sitting out. And 20 minutes or thereabouts, I was out maybe half an hour with my deck chair and changing around, etc., etc. And I thought it did me good, and getting it on my feet as well, because that doesn't get much sun. Now, when you were younger, I would have got plenty of that, because you were out swimming in the summertime in a grand time, and then you were helping somebody with the hay and that, and you were in, and we had the bog as well, so you were always up doing things out in the fresh air and all the rest of it, and you were togged out for the weather because the weather seemed to be better. You get seasons, don't you? Things change, but now the sunbeds. So I think people use the sunbeds to sometimes for to I suppose if they're going to a wedding or something like that, they want to look whatever way they want to look. The ladies, I think it's mostly ladies that use sunbeds. I think probably some younger men do as well, for all I know. But the business of using sunbeds, I suppose it'd want to be limited and limited. I think not as once a week. That's far too much. Perhaps 6 times a year, and to be monitored, so that there was no more than that. And I was saying to you just earlier, sort of 10 to 20 minutes or something, but apparently it's less than that. But one of the factors about sunbeds that would have been the reason was, and I think I saw that some place years ago, that they were a good thing from the point of view of the vitamin D, because you get it some way, and it's better to get it natural rather than a tablet. I have taken a tablet sometimes for vitamin D, because in the winter time you're not going to get much sun, are you? You can't certainly sit out in it unless you want to get frizz, because it could be frosty. The sun is out, it's going to be a frosty night. So here we are, and July has been a fairly wet month so far. Even there was an agriculture show here, and it was raining on Sunday. So it's always raining for that show, no matter what time they have it on. It seemed to be unfortunate vis-a-vis drizzly weather. And the feed here in front of me was full. But anyway, we're talking about sunbeds. I think banning is out. Common sense needs to apply. People can supply sunbeds themselves, and then it might be not couldn't be monitored then, because people are entitled to a certain amount of privacy. But I think if there's advice, and the people that have the sunbeds that now officially 365, they be responsible people, and they might have other things in the beauty parlors, because it's usually kind of a beauty parlor for the ladies to look good and get their fingers monitored, and all the rest of it, and the sort of way that they get treated and that in proper order, because they look well then. And we have to have more than the way they sort of try to put the best foot forward, generally speaking.
Can
So
I interject, John Malone? Would you mind?
go ahead.
Okay.
You get a word in like
You are
yeah.
talking quite a lot there, and I feel I have to interject to bring common sense to the situation. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. So I suppose, look, there's a lot of people here that would be quite upset. There's 350,000 people, okay, that would be quite upset if they weren't consulted about this process. So I suppose the first thing the government needs to do before they start talking about banning them is reach out to the 350,000 people and do a survey to find out, why are they using the sunbeds? That's the first question. And then maybe don't allow sunbeds in barber shops, these places where they're unregulated. Maybe have specialist clinics. That's an idea, okay? And then maybe also introduce a card with photo ID, a swipe card that you can only use it so many times a year. I think they're much better, because I tell you why. What could happen here is that if the government bans the 365 that are left tanning salons in Ireland. It'll go underground, of course. And then the other thing as well is a ban would lead to an increase in sunbed sales, which could lead to a bigger problem because people would buy a sunbed. You can buy a sunbed now for as little as €500 online. So people would probably start buying the sunbeds and then they'd go on them even more, causing a bigger issue. So you have to be very, very careful, as you say. You're not in favor of bans. And I think that's a very, very the wisest thing you've said, that a ban is not a very good thing.
Yeah, age gives you wisdom, as because you've made a mistake, so you've reached that stage where you're not going to make it. Try to minimize mistakes. Now, you're quite right. A card system, some way of monitoring it, for the good of the people. It's not trying to what was the word? Because people don't sometimes like to be ordered about, but from the health point of view, I think, and for their own safety, because they want to live a long life and all the rest of it as best they can and taking care of themselves, as we all try to do. So I think, as you mentioned there, a very good system, a modern system, very card system that would be monitored to that extent, and it would be prudent. And the sunbed people that supply it officially, the unofficial ones should not be allowed to operate because it's not regulated. But the ones that are there and they're responsible people, they have probably beauty parlors and the sunbed situation as well, and people use it. But I think the sunbed, the people, the 365 that are official, they're in business and they want to look after the people and take the advice and the safety precautions required. And so, therefore, I think, as you rightly say, a card system 6 times a year, that would be sufficient, and it would be advisable for them not to use any more. You see, when you come out with statistics as regards deaths from cancer and skin cancer, there's other factors besides sunbeds that can cause that. Can be hereditary in some ways, God help us, but it can be whatever sort of a life you lead, aside from the sunbed business, it can be a factor as well. But I think moderation in all things is not right. And I think your system, by way of cards, a monitoring system like that 6 times a year, would be because it's for their good health. And I think people are responsible in their own way if they're treated with that type of kind
I
of
think
advice.
I'd be interested in two areas here. One is to find out, are people actually using them for medical reasons? That'd be very, very important. But I think the notion of the tanning salon, the actual tanning salon. So you'd have to take away the idea of a tanning salon for this to work. I'll tell you why. It's because you can't have the tanning salon as their only income is from a sunbed, because that's not going to
Right.
work. You would have to have kind of
No.
a multifaceted approach where they're in a specialist clinic that does all kinds of beauty treatments and does medical stuff and for
Correct.
individuals, and that way they have sources of income coming from different places. So I think the idea of the tanning salon is probably dead in the water at this stage, probably, and anybody who's in the business should probably consider
Uh,
moving into another area.
yeah. Well, and I think people that use the sunbed would say you monitor it 6 times a year, as you were saying, the card system. And I think I presume medical advice. They might have their own doctor, and depending on their own conditions, shall we say, because everybody has a different type of a condition, haven't they? And some people can be prone to something that somebody else wouldn't be prone to, if you know what I mean. So the best person to advise that would be a medical doctor that would know the patient and that would be treating for other things, as the fellow says, over the years, and the ladies especially. And depending on what sort of situation they're in as regards their skin and so on and so forth, that in some cases they might be advised not to use that sunbed because of their medical condition or what have you. So I think all that sort of come into play, and also this common sense approach that we do have a scarcity of vitamin D, and so advice needs to be coming there from that point of view. But the business of tanning studios, that should be done away with. It should be a multifaceted situation, that they have the facility for a person to be able to use sunbed with this moderation that you spoke of, by way of 6 times a year, which should be adequate for whatever it is that they need to use a sunbed. Perhaps a wedding, or perhaps a christening, or perhaps some outing that the ladies like to be sort of prepared for it and do all the little things that they do. They can be quite a while twiddling themselves up and all the rest of it. And years ago, they used to get a thing called a perm, and it used to last for 6 months. So they were showing themselves abroad when they had a perm. That
I
was
remember,
years
I
ago.
remember it was worse than that in the 1980s. Okay, I had four sisters, so I know all about perms. I know all about peroxide and bleached hair and the whole lot. Okay, they've gone through all the phases, and there was no better time to have different hairstyles than the 1980s. Okay, and the thing about it was that I remember my sisters one week did have a perm. And like the chemicals from a perm are fairly strong, okay? And then the following week they go in and get the head burned off them with peroxide, sometimes at 40%, and they just get this thing called volume 40 peroxide and would turn your hair almost white. But the people were putting these nasty chemicals in their hair. The 80s was a dangerous time to be beautiful.
It was. And talking about that, my late wife, her sister was a hairdresser, but her mother wanted something done to her hair. Whatever way she did her hair, she looked like space. And so if you did not get a fright the way the hair was done. So she had to sort of undo whatever she did to try and make it look normal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was a sort of episode that occurred. With regard to the ladies, they do, as you say, you had 5 or 6 sisters, and so you had experience of all this carry on, and the ladies do things like that. So because I even remember when I was a kid, when you got your things for Christmas, I got skates one time, but I couldn't manage them at all. So I had to tell the father, bring them back and ask Santa Claus to give me a scooter. And so he did that. And then I got a scooter and I said, thanks very much. I'm glad he had the scooter handy. And so I was able to go on the scooter. But I couldn't go on the skates. My feet went everywhere. And then the girls used to get, I remember there used to be wheeling little prams with dolls in the prams. So these are all the little episodes that I recall. So the girls all had this way of going on, and they were always trying to tidy things up,
Can I ask you,
So
can I, can I, a-
DNA. Yeah, go ahead.
can I ask you, John Malone, have you ever used a sunbed?
No, because ipso facto, I didn't ever see a need for it, because I depend on nature. As I was telling you, I sat in my deck chair outside, put on the L'Oreal 50, which is a pretty safe one, and and here, there, and yonder. But of course, I couldn't get it at the back, but it's in the back of the neck, anyways. And I'm getting a bit of sun, vitamin D on my feet and all the rest of it. I cook my feet up to try and get, because you don't get much on your feet. And in
I
July you could
I
do
can
what?
tell you a story that I went on the sunbed when I was 15, a long time ago, right?
Yeah,
And I went on what was called a turbo sunbed. That was available by
turbo.
turbo. You'd be brown in 5 minutes. You'd like a piece of toast. So I went on and what you had to do, okay, they don't really wear them anymore. Some people are reckless about not wearing goggles. But anyway, your man said, listen, but this is a turbo sunbed, so you have to wear the goggles every time you go on it. So what I done was
Yeah,
I went on it and I was on it for about, I suppose, maybe 2 sessions a week for 5 weeks, I think it was. And at the end of it all, I looked like a panda from the goggles. Because when I took off I had these big white circles around my eyes. There people were calling me Panda and going around Dublin.
And by the way, did you get a colour?
I got a fantastic color, okay, but I looked like a panda. I had these white eyes.
Well, there you are. And by the way, when you were on the sunbed, was it an all over affair, or was it just did your body get this brown color as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it done the job. It gave a very, very rich brown tan, and as I say, it was like a piece of toast.
Did that last long, that brown tan?
No, that's the thing. I mean, it lasts about 3 months, 4 months maybe, and you're back to white
Yeah,
again.
when you looked in the mirror, you must have wondered what you were looking at
Yeah, I have
because
photographs. I have photographs of it, and you can see me in a friend's garden, and I look like something at a Dublin Zoo.
at least you had the experience. You see, you were kind of with all them sisters, you were in the mix. And so now thing is, you're on the sunbed, and the fellow says, "Yeah, the goggles." So there was nothing here, but you had to have the goggles, otherwise you might go blind. And so that's why the goggles was on.
Hmm.
But the goggles might have been too big for your age. And so that when you had the brown on over the white eyes, so when it was successful in visibly the brown, the fact that it was white here kind of made it look a bit odd.
Yeah.
So you probably kept a low profile and tried to sort of go backwards so that it didn't see you the front because of the appearance. And you right to say of a panda, and you weren't in the zoo
I was not.
behind back.
So the beauty industry, as beautiful as it is, it can be a dangerous industry at times, and people have to be careful, I suppose, and that's the answer, isn't it? They have to be responsible.
Aye, well, there you are, you see. Well, I never went down that road, and I think nature was my man. And you'd be red, you'd be sunburned because vis-a-vis tans, well, you didn't have anything to sort of, you had nothing to do with that because money was scarce, shall we say. If you had a jingle in a pocket, you were wealthy. And if you produce a 25s, you must have been a man of property because mostly it was only four woodbines because you could get four woodbines and you were smoking. I remember one time there was a shopping boil, just digressing for a bit, and McHenry's, and they went wallop. But the children was these big, these packets of cigarettes, was there many, and we were in what we call our ash plant. It was a little shed where there was supposed ashes, but there was no ashes in it. So we were all in there smoking, and it was like a chimney coming out because like there was a good gap, and there was only they would say about 2 foot thing, and then there was a concrete roof, and they were all in there, probably about eight young fellas puffing these fags that we got for nothing from McHenry's. And the father come in and come out to see where the smoke was coming from, and we were run out of it anyways. And cigarettes. So you'd be surprised what you do when you're young, and you don't realise that you could be getting something, lung cancer or something. So you see the way you're sort of growing up and the chances that you take and the rest of it, looking to survive, isn't that right?
That's it.
Your time isn't up, but you become more prudent by making mistakes. You become more prudent as you progress. So the business of sunbeds, you had an experience of it, and so you were brown as a berry, but except for around the eyes. So it caused a bit of amusement to all those around, but you weren't too happy with it.
So there you go. That's our
You'd be up in
episode
the zoo.
that's our program on sunbeds. I think we've covered it fairly well, and I think we've given
I think
Micheál
so,
Martin
yeah. And
and
use a bit of common sense.
I think we've given Micheál Martin and the Irish Cancer Society and of course the 350,000 users something to think about, John Malone.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Let a bit of moderation come into the business and a bit of common sense. And the girls that use it, some of them might be more allergic than others, and get a bit of a medical advice from your doctor. Because you might say you have a skin condition or you have this, that, or the other, and you shouldn't be using it. Use nature or take a couple of tabs for vitamin D.
And perhaps even John Malone, that they should focus maybe on the inner beauty.
Know your hurling. In other words, a few prayers won't go astray.
A few
Because
prayers won't go astray.
no, and it'll help you along. And keep an open mind. By all means, try to look as best you can, but you can put on. The ladies can put on stuff that look as if they're after being abroad for a bit,
That's right.
without having to go to a sunbed at all.
Now you're talking.
So you use the upstairs department and take a bit of a medical advice as you use, and then limit the business, as you rightly say, 6 times a year. But maybe other ones can be more. They wouldn't be allergic to it. They might be able to use it a little bit more if they need for it's only a couple of minutes or something, isn't it?
That's
I
it.
thought it was longer than that, because when I sat out, I was say a half an hour between getting a bit of the vitamin D, right, left, and centre. So, anyways, good. I think we've covered the ground in a kind of a common sense way.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Oliver.